My Life with Flu looks at one woman's relationship with the flu virus from the first time she catches it right through to the present day. I'm a playwright. I spend most of my life making things up, but I work in collaboration with people who are doing very real things. I've worked with all sorts of different scientists, and I really enjoy not only communicating those ideas to the audience and learning about them myself, but I also really enjoy understanding what motivates and inspires the scientists behind that work.
My research here at the Sanger Institute focuses on flu. We are very interested in how the virus genetics and the human genetics come together to change the outcome of infection from mild to severe disease. One of the things that we are motivated to do at the Sanger Institute is to try and explain our science to people. The Wellcome Trust sponsored a workshop to get writers and scientists together to swap ideas and see if they could develop a radio play.
All the writers were sent a form to fill in areas of science that we were interested in, and I deliberately kept a very, very open mind. I wanted to go in and see what happened.
At the workshop, Sarah Woods and I met. Sarah had already said that her interest was more on general science and perhaps with some evolutionary aspect, and myself and a colleague were the virologists there. So Sarah and I sat down and we started to discuss things, and the story grew from that.
Listening to Paul talk about the flu, I began to realise that it's not just about lying in bed for a few days feeling miserable. It's about the battleground of the human body, what's going on inside you, and also what's going on in the wider world as that virus travels across the globe. And I think as I began to feel the inspiration, the scent of a story, Paul could feel that too. And I started to see how we could turn what had seemed like quite a dull subject into something really very exciting.
Early on in the process, Sarah came up with a really quite neat idea, which was this idea of marking out a person's life against the time of when virus outbreaks happen, particularly for influenza. So that gave a really interesting storyline because we had two different timelines going on, the virus and the person.
In subsequent meetings, as we developed the story, it became nice that within each act or scene, we could tease apart a different bit of the science, and that just seemed to grow.
Starting to write is a mixture of doing household chores, little distractions, really doing lots and lots of things to stay away from the page, and in the process of doing that, allowing those little bits of inspiration to start to connect. And I think there's a point where there's probably 4 or 5 or 6 different little things that come together, and I'm hardly aware of it. I find myself often at the kitchen table writing. Once I connect with characters, with their desires, their motivations, the world fades away and it's their voices I can hear.
My mom wasn't feeling well when I left.
You'd better not flake out on me.
Oh, never.
David's sneeze wasn't a big sneeze, but his nose and throat are loaded. Tiny, invisible particles of flu virus floating until Jill breathes in. Dragging a single flu particle past the defense of her skin and the mucous membranes in her nose, down her trachea and into her right lung.
When I first read the near final draft of the play, I was frankly amazed that Sarah was able to take the science that we've been talking about and absolutely use it as an integral part of the story. One of the things I've really got out of this experience is how it should change and influence how I describe and talk about my science. What's really clear from what we've done is that the narrative of the story, where the complex science is wedded into this, really helps explain the science, and that makes the science come alive. Whether we can really take this forward and use this as a way of communicating science more broadly, we'll see, but it's certainly been an interesting and an eye-opening experience.
I've learnt a lot from this process, both the things that I expected to learn about how to best live with viruses, how they affect us, but I've also learned a lot about the commonality between my role as an artist in society and Paul's role as a scientist, and how similar our motivations are to affect change in the world for the good, to communicate with people about how we live and how we might live better, and to somehow contribute to that journey that we're taking, all of us, into the future.